Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Lindsay. I am sitting here very grateful to be home, and also that, so many of our family and friends are safe from the recent storms, and thinking about all the people who aren't. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking as I was looking out the window here at this beautiful blue sky and sunny day. Man, we are so freaking fortunate, aren't we? It is amazing. Yeah.
We are. One of the couples that we work out with every single morning at our gym, this morning they weren't there because the husband, the wife was going and getting all the supplies, and the husband was leaving today at noon with a group from his church or some type of men's group or something. I didn't ask further details on that, but they're driving up to North Carolina to help with all of the flooding. And I'm just so thankful it wasn't us, and thankful that there's people like him who are able and are willing to go and help and offer support and provide things like that. It's a good world we live in when we see people in our community able to help like that. But leads us into a great conversation today. We've got a treat on the podcast. We've got someone who was introduced to me as the mother of insurance, Vonda. It's so great to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Vonda, I think I met you at Brain Share. I think that's where we actually formally met face to face, right?
Yeah.
But I knew about you long, long before Brain Share. Like, you are a force to be reckoned with. I think that I personally, as a female in the insurance industry, am so grateful for the people that have blazed trails far before me and continue to set such an incredible example. And I've followed your career a little bit, loved meeting you in person, but then Facebook is actually, I saw a post on Facebook about you and the work that you do. I think it's at a ranch for some children. So I got to tell you, number one, it was one of the most moving things I read. It absolutely incited me to action, and I'd love for you to share, first of all, what that is, how you got involved, and how that's become, such a big part of your life.
It is a huge part. It's the Flint Hills Foster Teen Camps. And what it is there's actually a property of almost 300 acres. It's in the middle of kind of nowhere in Kansas, but it's a beautiful property in the Flint Hills. Lots of grassy plains and hills to hike. And we have a building set up there where we have dormitories and different facilities, a swimming pool, a challenge course where we can host camps for foster teens. And we serve teens from age 12 to 18 with two different programs. The program for the younger teens focuses on just facing some of the things that have happened to them and helping them overcome these challenges that make them feel they can't move forward, because so much of what's happened to them, it's completely out of their control. It was not their fault, wasn't their choice, and yet they've had horrible things happen, even taken out of the home, that they have to live through. A lot of trauma. And so this is a very healing experience. And then for the other ones, for the older kids, it's, focusing on what happens when they age out. It's a really scary thing. You turn 18, approximately, and they say, here, go live your life. And it's scary, frightening to think about what happens. And the statistics are horrible. And so I got involved actually because of insurance. One of the agents that worked for us, he started insuring this facility, and then he started coaching out there, and we started supporting them financially, going to their auctions, their charity auctions. And then one day he was like, I really think you should come out and help at camp. I think you would really like it. And I always call it the hardest job you'll ever love. I think the Army used to have some kind of a slogan like that.
Something
I
like
think you're right.
Yeah, it really is. It's once you get in there, you are so hooked that you want to do anything you can for these kids. And so we do. We spend our whole summer facilitating these camps and fundraising the rest of the time. And this weekend, I'm really excited. We're doing an activity where we have volunteer photographers. These are professional photographers that have volunteered their time. And we're going to bring foster teens in that are seniors, and they're going to do their senior pictures out on the property because that's a really expensive thing for kids. And one of the things these kids don't have is sometimes they don't have a lot of documentation of their past, and for them to have that expenditure for really nice senior pictures. So we're going to take that project on and see if we can expand it next year and in further years, to be able to make that memory for them and to continue something to give back to those kids.
I love that. I spent I don't know how many summers, probably 3 or 4 summers in high school and then into college volunteering at an equine therapy facility. And then after I graduated from grad school and I was here in Charleston, spent time working at a nonprofit for veterans that's kind of a rehabilitation type of environment. And so I've got a lot of respect for doing that with teens. The equine therapy program that I worked was, I was a peer mentor because I was realistically their same age or even younger than them at some points. Um, but it doing those type of things gives you a different outlook on life, and it gives you a different outlook of things
It
to be
does.
thankful for that you would never we take so much for granted these days that it gives you
Gratitude.
some
It
good
really
time.
does.
Yeah,
Gives you
some
perspective because you look at some of these kids, and the very first kid that I ever worked with, we were playing a lot of cards that year. There's a lot of times when you can really get to know the kids and spend some downtime with them, and we were playing cards, and they were talking about how they felt, and he was like really happy. And this was a teen that had been so sexually abused by his father that he had to wear diapers and drink like Miralax cocktails throughout the entire day. It was horrible. And yet he was moving past that to be able to find this center of peace and to say that he was happy in life. And you just think, wow, what can possibly be wrong in my life that I can't get past to be able to have that kind of an outlook? I mean, that was my first summer, and I was just like, it blew my mind.
Yeah, talking about getting hooked. So the horse farm that Lindsay's talking about is run by a really good friend of mine, and my husband and I both were on the board for a really long time. Lindsay was volunteer of the year. Like we our whole family spent time at this barn, and I often say they did a ton for our family. Like we volunteered our time, we volunteered, we supported them financially. We went to all their events. Like it was a family. In fact, when both of my girls graduated from high school, I said that there was my side of the family, my husband's side of the family, and my barn family that was there. And actually there was more barn people in my backyard than any other. And I have a huge family. Like don't get me wrong, it's just they were so massive and it's such an incredible community. But while they kept being grateful for the things that we did, I will say we all got far more from that experience than you ever imagine. And it's interesting. It's so interesting. So tell me, this came because you were insuring them, but how many of your staff is now involved in going out there? I'm just curious how widespread this.
I don't, our staff is not as much. What our staff did want to do, they wanted, like when we had a flood one year, they wanted to be able to do a work day out there and be able to help with that. They do more like they collect items They provide a lot of the supplies that we use. They will donate money. We have some of them that I have a couple of them that want to coach next year, and so they kind of get involved that way. I always tell them I'm grateful that they keep the office running because I spend so much of my summer out there that it's like it's just on the calendar that Vonda's out at camp this week. The other thing they got to where they don't ask me how camp went on the first day I get back because usually you're still very emotional from all of that. And the very first time that they started asking me that, I launched into all these stories and I had them in tears. And they're like, okay, we now know we have to wait a few days before we talk to you about camp. And it's like, yeah,
You
just
should write a book. You should
days.
totally
Yeah.
write a book about all the experiences. I've often thought like people that don't volunteer their time, they don't realize how impactful it is on every other part of your life. And speaking of that, like listen, this camp is not the only way you volunteer your time, clearly. Um I recently saw that you were named the number 2 female on the PIA national board. Is that correct? Like
It's
you're the
the
only
executive, yeah, the executive committee, the officers team. Yeah, I'm the second female in 93 years to be elected to the board.
93 years, people. 93 years. Well, no one better, but I will tell you, I'm
It was
hoping we're
time.
changing that time. Like, can we change that frequency and time a little bit? Like,
I
it's
hope so. There's
what?
some amazing national directors that are already on the board. We just need to see more of them in that executive committee level of leadership. It's way past time.
Tell me, why do you think that is? Like, maybe I don't know. Like, I don't know your thoughts on female leadership and all of that. I probably have a little bit of a different view, but why do you think that happens that way?
Well, it's one thing, for females to lift other females up, but we have to have the support of men as well. And it's a very. I was talking to Lindsay earlier before we were on the on air, but it was a challenge for me to in my head that I had to infiltrate the blue suits. They have this picture of the officers, and they're all in their blue suits and for me, it was really important not to wear a blue suit that day. I didn't want to look like all the rest of them. I wanted to stand out a little bit and say, okay, this is something that's different. Like when your kids are little and they sing that song, what's one of these things is not like the other. I wanted to say, hey, one of these things is not like the other. Finally. And so that was really important to me. I don't know why it was probably a silly thing and other people would roll their eyes, but you know we always say if you can't see us, you can't be us, and you have to be able to see somebody in those positions and say, okay, it's possible. And that was important to me also. I mean, not only the fact that I feel like I have a lot to offer, but with my background and experiences and things like that, but I also felt that it was my duty to try to get that moving in the right direction.
So obviously, being on the board, you're going to be bringing a lot of influence, a lot of inspiring like women leadership to the industry. But what else are you looking forward to making an impact with being on the board?
I think just looking at change, I mean, any of these associations that they've been around for a long time, they're legacy associations, but you have to blend legacy with, moving on and innovating and getting fresh ideas. And I've said before, we can't just scrap everything and start over, but what would it look like if you could? And if you could do that, what would it look like and what pieces of that can you bring in to refresh it and to make it something that's going to move forward? Associations in general are struggling, I think, and that's not just in the insurance industry. Every nonprofit board I think I've ever talked to in the last few years is struggling because there's just a lot of competition for people's time right now. It's not only just competition for people's money for support, but time is a huge issue because there's a lot of, you're pulled so many different directions. And I think for an association, there's just a lot of noise. And then you get to the insurance world and you have the traditional associations, but then you have all these other groups that have come in, whether they're social media groups or they're mastermind groups or aggregator groups that have created this support network. And an agent has so many different choices than they used to. So we have to make sure that we're in the running for that. So many. Yeah, a lot of noise.
You know, Vonda, I started my career in an association. I wouldn't be in this industry if it weren't for an association. And I'm super grateful for that. For those of you who don't know, I actually joined the PIA of Ohio. That was the agent, that was the organization that I joined. It was run by George Hansel, and we were the largest PIA, I believe, with the exception maybe of New York at the time. And one of the things that I was brought in was to help the merger between Ohio Big I and Ohio PIA, which none had merged 10 years prior. So it was like, they'd all been done in the, I don't even know, 80s, 90s. I'm not even 100% sure. And really it hadn't been done for a while. So the structure changed, the thought process changed, but the reality was having two associations in a state is even more redundant. Like there's even more choice and more division and more whatever. And so I agree with you. And this past December, I did a presentation on all the different things that come at an agent. So they're asked to, go to carrier trips and events. They're asked to go to their AMS trips or events. They're asked to go to a mastermind. They're asked to go to, their association. They're asked to go to their aggregator, sometimes 3 times a year. Like it is unbelievable how much time to stay connected and up on things. And that's not even mentioning some of these other innovative things like Indie Tech, which you were just at and we were talking about. And the division, well, and I love choice, like don't get me wrong, but I do sometimes scratch my head and think about what would happen if we unified some of this and made it a collective effort rather than individual efforts. What if there wasn't 500 events to talk about and there were only 30 events or 20 event? Like imagine what that would be like from an agent perspective, which we all say that that's what we have in mind, right? It's interesting. So I love your idea of imagine what this could be, not what it's always been. What would that look like? So I don't know what the biggest well, I know some big challenges that are facing our industry, but I don't know the biggest things that are on the agenda for PIA. Can you give us an idea of the things that they're thinking about and trying to tackle? And I'd love to hear that. I truly would.
Well, I think, trying to stay ahead of the technology landscape is always a big focus. Trying to blend the generations that we have. We have some generations that are getting ready to exit out, and we have to replace it. And in our own agencies, in our associations, it's no different. Trying to help our agency members be able to do the same thing and replace the people in their agencies with younger people, the next generation of workers. So being able to help facilitate that, just navigating the market right now, market access is something that we need to all look at because that's tough right now. So that's everything's, pretty much everything's on the table right now. We did just announce that we have a new CEO that was recently hired. So we're really excited. He comes with a great history and of experience, and so we're really excited to get going and working with him. I hear he's I've only met him briefly at the national meeting a couple weeks ago, but I've heard he's got a lot of great ideas going forward. So it's exciting. Somebody had sent an email earlier to me today about an idea and said, what do we do now to facilitate this? And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna defer to Ariel because I'm only on day two.
That's really
It's
funny.
like basically I don't know yet, but we'll make it happen. So, but no, I'm excited about that.
What was the path that you took to become on the board? Have you been involved at the state level before?
Yes, I was on the state level. I started on a committee, like a lot of people do. I was on the membership committee for a while, and then gradually, then I took over another board position of someone that had retired. So I moved onto the board at that point and worked through the channels there, and then went into a national director position. And so I've been doing the national director position. This is my actual starting my third set of 3 years. So
Yeah. So, um, it's a long road. And the reality is, it's a lot of time and effort. Like, I was on the other side and saw how much time agents give in order to be such a servant, leader in this industry. Do you find the same is true with this kind of volunteer that
very
is
much
true
so.
with yeah, so give
Yeah.
me some ideas, because I don't know that everybody knows that. If they're not involved, they might not understand what you get out of it. So give us some of your perspective, how it's shaped your career by being involved.
Well, I think the knowledge is power, and you are so much more knowledgeable, when you're going through these different processes. For instance, I think about flood in an entirely different manner now that I've had to go to Capitol Hill and advocate for it. You have to study the data, and you have to know where the weaknesses are and where the strengths are, and be able to go in and advocate for the independent agent. And I think that makes it for me more important that we do a better job of education when with our own clients and with our own association at the state level. We have to do a good job of that because we're the people that can help them navigate that. And I think because of that, I know more about it because I'm at a different level than just if I was looking at what was ever going across my desk, because that's overwhelming as well.
Yeah, for me, it's relationships. I'll tell you, again, I would not be in this industry if it weren't for an association. And specifically, the agents that I met through that association are still my friends today. Like, I was on a trip recently and I ran into someone who was on the first board when I joined the association. And, I just look at him and I think, I'm so grateful for what I've learned from you, because I knew nothing about this industry when I joined. I was completely outside the industry and happened to have a skill set that they were looking for. And the generosity and time that they put into each other, the industry as a whole, and people like me that are complete outsiders were unbelievable. And I don't think you can really communicate that until you've actually sat in the seats and tried to solve things on behalf of the industry, not necessarily just on behalf of your agency. And it's a different place to sit. There's no two ways around that.
Right. Well, it's just like one of the things that we were on Capitol Hill a couple weeks ago, uh, trying to get this, trying to say, look, you guys have got to do something about this flood reauthorization. The way we've been just kicking the can down the road is ridiculous, and we talk about it every year when we're there, and they still can't fix it. But now they're trying to do a direct to consumer product through FEMA, to the National Flood Program. They're going to do this. They're going to test this direct to consumer. Well, it was interesting that every legislative office we were in a couple weeks ago, none of them knew about that, had no clue, which they do now, and now we're continuing, we're even still sending them additional information. But I look at what's going on right now since this hurricane, and can you imagine if somebody was trying to figure out all the details of a flood policy on their own? They could actually bind it. Yeah, and now they're trying to deal with all the stuff, and you hope that they if they went online, and bound it themselves, that they actually really know what they just bound for themselves. Um, you would have no agent advocate or anything like that. I mean, I just can't imagine that that's really a good idea. So I don't know. There's a reason we have to take extra classes to deal with flood. So yeah, those are just, like I said, the things that we advocate for, that people have no clue that we're fighting for that, and so it's frustrating that they don't understand how hard we work on that, just to make sure that they can do their job on a daily basis.
So, Vonda, as we wrap up, one thing that I'm really passionate about, and it seems like you would also be passionate about, is getting involved in your community, whether that's your professional community or your community where you live. Um, how do you, in your agency, or even how do you feel personally about like young people? How would you suggest like the best way to get involved in your community and start giving back?
I think they need to look at the nonprofits in the area. I've said this before, that we have this match day in our community where they have a lot of nonprofits that you can choose to donate money for. And the cool part is you look at this sheet and it's like, oh my gosh, there's like 100 different nonprofits. And when you look at that, there's got to be something that you would be interested in. And that's, I think, where it starts, because when you can take something that you have an interest in with something that you're giving back, you can match that passion with what you can do. I think it's important to start with something that is really can be important to you. Whether somebody can get involved, like you said, with the veterans groups, because maybe you had a veteran in your family, or in my case, I kind of stumbled into the foster system, and then it's just something that you become passionate about it, and then sometimes it kind of takes over.
I love that. I love that. Well, I got to say, Vonda, I'm so excited that you forged a path after 93 years being, the second female on this executive committee. And I got to tell you, I'm actually interested to see the picture of what you wore. Not a blue suit, I can
It's
tell you
yeah,
that.
it's my cover page, or my cover photo on my Facebook page. I'm really proud of it right now.
I love it. That's fantastic. I was going to ask you what you wore, but trust me, I'm going to go
Yeah,
find.
yeah. I was channeling my inner Jackie Kennedy, so yeah,
I
that'll
love
make
that.
sense to you once you see it.
Yeah, I personally want to thank you because I love what you put out there. And I actually really look forward to seeing your stories about the camp and the things that you're doing there, but also the change that you're making, and the example that you're setting for other females in this industry is pretty impressive. So,
Thank you. I
if
appreciate
someone
that.
wants to reach out to you and get advice, maybe someone's like, I don't know, maybe I want to actually try and be the next person that follows right in the same footsteps and needs a mentor. How can someone get a hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, is probably a good way to catch me. Facebook Messenger is probably a good way to catch me too. So, or you can email me at bonda@copelandins.com.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I am super excited. Originally when it was just the camp, that was fantastic. But when I saw you made that, I was like, man, I cannot wait to interview her. So thank you for spending your afternoon with us. I really
no
appreciate it.
problem. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.